Hello boys and girls, Mrs. McPherson here. Today we're going to look at how we multiply two fractions. So the great thing about multiplying fractions is it's actually a lot easier than adding and subtracting fractions. You do not have to worry about finding common denominators in order to multiply two fractions. Let's use the example 9/10 times 1/2. Okay? So when you multiply fractions, the best way to write it is to write it horizontally like this. So a little different than when we add fractions. So all you do is multiply the top. 9 times 1 is 9. Multiply the bottom. 10 times 2 is 20. And then you check to see if you can simplify. In this case, 9/20, we cannot simplify because there's no number that can be divided out of 9 and out of 20. So the answer to 9/10 times 1/2 equals 9/20. Let's look at another example. Two-thirds times 7/8. Okay, so remember, all you do is you multiply the top and you multiply the bottom. All right, so let's multiply. 2 times 7 is 14. 3 times 8 is 24. Okay, now let's check. Our answer is 14/24. Does that look like a fraction that can be simplified? Yes, it can be simplified. Let me write this down on the bottom. Okay, so some tricks that we can help us in order to simplify is you can look, and first you could find the greatest common factor, but that can take some time. A good hint to use is if both the numbers on the top and the bottom are even, you can always divide 2 out of both of them. So I could divide 14 divided by 2, and I can do 24 divided by 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 24 divided by 2 is 12. So that means 2/3 times 7/8 simplified equals 7/12. Okay, so what is multiplying fractions? Why is it so simple for us to do it this way? Well, let's look at this example in order to help us better understand. If I have 1/2 times 1/2. When you multiply by a fraction, what this symbol here is really saying is the word of. So in this case, you could read this as, what is half of 1/2? Let's draw a picture to model this. Let's say I have a pizza, and I give half to my friend, and I keep half of the pizza. Okay, so this shaded part here is my half. Okay, and if I were to ask the question, what is half of my half? Well, that means that if I just took the half of the pizza that's mine and I split that in half, it's saying how big is one of these pieces here? What would that be out of that whole original pizza? Okay, so if I were to multiply 1/2 times 1/2, and I follow the process of multiplying the numerators and the denominators, I get 1/4. And if you look back at my example here, when I originally took half of the pizza for myself, and then I found, well, what was half of that half? It is 1/4 of the pizza. Okay? Let's do a few more examples. Okay, let's look at an example that's written with that word of. So let's say I have 2/5 of 5/12. So when you see a sentence written this way, it's really just telling you to multiply 2/5 times 5/12. Okay, so remember, you just multiply your numerators, multiply your denominators. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 12 is 60. So I have 10/60ths. Okay, but 10/60ths is definitely a fraction that I can simplify. For instance, I noticed that both of them are multiples of 10, right? If you count by tens, you get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. They're multiples of 10, which means you can divide 10 out of both the top and the bottom. And if you do that, you get 1/6 as a simplified answer. So that means that 2/5 of 5/12 is 1/6. Let's do one more example. Ooh, let's look at a problem like this. So in this case, we actually have 3 fractions. So what we do here is it's just adding an additional step. But luckily, this addition step here already has common denominators. So when you see these parentheses, you want to do those first. So 1/3 plus 1/3 is 2/3. So my problem is 1/2 times 2/3. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. Do you think that 2/6 can be simplified? Well, first I noticed that they're both even, which means you can divide 2 out of both the top and the bottom. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 1/3 would be your simplified answer. Okay, that is multiplying 2 fractions.